When was the last time that and this is a feeling thing, not so much of a thinking thing, when the last time you felt just one or two clicks above mere happy to joy? Oh, what a stupid question. I can't answer that. All I want you to do is kind of think in terms of there's a difference between happiness and joy, and I don't think it's a moral difference. It's just a difference in kind. I'm not sure I'd even say it's just a difference of degree, but there's a difference. And David writes about joy. That's why I think it's worth, doing a little introspection on. In Psalm 51:8, he says, "Oh, give me back my joy again." When you look at everything through verse 7, and you realize David was calling out to God, crying out to God, owning his sin. And what he wanted was the peace of experiencing God's forgiveness. And out of that peace would come joy. The fruit of the Spirit is you know this. It's silly for me to say it's my favorite thing in the Bible because I've got about 800 favorite things in the Bible. But the fruit of the Spirit in Galatians 5 is love, joy, peace. Now, just because they are in proximity to one another in this list, does that necessarily mean that they're connected? Well, probably not. However, I don't think anything is accidental or, just happenstance in Scripture. So, love, joy, and peace, they seem to be connected. I think for David, his joy would have emerged from peace. I think, though, sometimes peace emerges from joy. There are times when because joy this is not an intellectual thing. It's an emotional thing. Now, to enjoy something, you can either, that happens just out of the blue, or you can choose to enjoy, and in that case, then there is an intellectual application. But the joy is a feeling. And when you experience peace, sometimes it's because of a joy, because of experiencing some kind of joy. In my own life, there are times when I can think of three. Well, now that I'm thinking about it, it's 7 distinct moments of joy. The first 3 was when I held each of our daughters at birth. I felt an incredible joy. I was happy, but it was way deeper than just happy. And in that moment, even though there was tons of stuff that I had to, we're going to be looking at, complications and expenses and, life as a parent, I had this, in that moment while I was holding these babies, a joy and a peace. Well, okay. And then the other 4 times were with my grandkids. Joy. Yeah, it's not that deep of a subject. You got it at this point. And David cries out, give me back my joy again. So for David, he had the experience of joy. And I think we're not just talking about, oh, I held my baby, profound joy. We're not talking about that, just felt so good to see the good thing happen. And there's also a connection between fulfillment and joy. I think he's talking about his relationship with God. And he knew what it was like to feel connected to God, and as a result of that, to experience the joy of that connection. But his sin had severed that in his mind. And so now he cries out, oh, give me back my joy again. And then he says, you have broken me. Now that's worth, let's think a little bit about it. My question is, so did God break him? Kinda, but sorta not. Here's what I mean. When David was experiencing profound brokenness, so it's not like, oh, you're not broken. No, he was broken, and profoundly so. Well, I think it's because when anyone breaks with God's design, when they sin, there will be this emotional barrier created between us and God. Now, on a theological level, sin, the most significant thing that sin does is it separates us from God. And the really, I'm trying to decide if saying the only reason Jesus came is fair, but the primary reason, at least, that Jesus came, lived, died, and rose from the grave was to take away the sin that severed, blocked our connection with God. David is experiencing for himself that felt separation from God. Does God turn his back on us when we sin? No. But I think what has happened to David is the consequences of his sin have broken him. And one of the consequences was this deep sense of alienation, separation from God. There's a sense in which, no, David, God didn't really break you. You broke you. When you broke with his design, you are now experiencing the consequences of that break. And yes, those consequences have broken you, and they're supposed to. So is God, I think David felt that God was, aggressively breaking him, or had aggressively broken him. I don't want to criticize David for crying out loud, but I do know from my own experience, because when God set the world up, and I don't just mean the physical world, I mean the whole of the world, my place in it, your place in it, how we interact with ourselves and one another and with him. He created a system where scientifically it's called cause and effect. If then, when I sin, the consequences of that sin, according to God's design, will, at the very least, eventually get my attention. At the very worst, will break me. So, the brokenness that I feel often, I'm not going to say always, but often the brokenness that I feel emotionally and spiritually, and I feel this often, is the result of my own choices most often. Sometimes it is also the result of someone else's choice. And I am left to deal with their choices, the consequences of their choices. They can be horrible. We live in a world where, minute by minute, incredible horrors are occurring. And even acknowledging that, even knowing that, it is true that my choices break me. And there's this aspect, since I'm on a rant about choice. Maybe the biggest choice is, I think the biggest choice is, what will I do about God? And then there's a cascade of many, many other choices. And one of the most important choices is, what will I do about what has happened to me, whether I caused it or someone else caused it. David understood, whether it was through instruction or intuitively, he understood what you do when the consequence of your sin gets your attention is you seek forgiveness. That's what he's done. And he says, give me back my joy again. You have broken me. Now let me rejoice. What keeps you from rejoicing anyway, David? Well, I think that would be his emotional state, his feeling, and connected to that, but a little bit separate, are his beliefs. What he believes about himself and what he believes about God's relationship with him and God's interaction with him. That when I spent a long time in my life pushing away feeling, because frankly, most of the time my feelings got me into trouble. I was impulsive, I was impractical, I was immature. But you can't assassinate your feelings. It doesn't work that way. To rejoice is partly a choice, but it also involves my emotions. Now let me rejoice. Give me what I need emotionally, spiritually, even intellectually, to be able to return to the joy. See, that's what rejoice means. It means experiencing joy again. Joy, joyce. Today, is that anything you need? It is for me. Well, maybe this is a legitimate prayer for us as well. Oh, Lord, give me back my joy again. You have broken me. Now let me rejoice. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what form it will take. But I do know that's a legitimate prayer. See you next time on So Care with Stevie.